I first found out about Breath of Fire Latina Theater Ensemble probably about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I was a student at UCI, and I had done a production with Sara Guerrero, which is one of the founders of Breath of Fire. And so through that production, I learned a little bit more about Breath of Fire. And so she told us that they had like writing sessions and they had other opportunities. So one day I just decided to go, and I've been there ever since. So it's been about 2 or 3 years that I've been with them. So all the classes that they offer and that have benefited me, they do like playwriting, and then they've done screenwriting. They've done sometimes just writing workshops where if you want to go with any piece that you are working on, or so it might be. I think it was just general writing, but whatever piece that you take in, we'd love to share and, feedback. We've also had like movement, acting. We've done recently musical theater. So there really are a range of workshops that they've done. And how they benefited me, I've got a taste of everything. So from playwriting, screenwriting, and sometimes they brought in like Jose Cruz Gonzalez. They brought in different playwrights, and then I believe there was a workshop, Theater of the Oppression, so they brought in somebody who like specialized in that. So I've been able to learn from different areas of theater and acting and playwriting, which has been awesome because that gives you a more, overall sense of what it all is. So you get a taste of everything. So the importance of having I would say like Latinx playwrights and scripts and all that good stuff is there's such a community out there that still hasn't had a voice, and we've been very limited in our choices of who gets to be that one spokesperson for that whole community. So definitely it's very important, like with Breath of Fire, to get different voices on the Latinx platform because not everybody's experience is the same. So really a range of voices and shows and scripts and actors as well. So. The importance of having bilingual plays performed is that you let another part of the community into this world, right? So I think it's and also it makes everything more relatable. And so in essence, when you have because many folks speak English and Spanish or just English, but what about the folks who just speak Spanish, for example, and not just Spanish, but in bilingualism and other communities who have dual languages, but it makes everything come together. The communities come together because there's an understanding. So when you have members in the audience who maybe couldn't understand one part or the other, like it still brings them in together because you got those two communications going on.
I found out about Breath of Fire through a friend, Yolanda. She is also a playwright at Breath of Fire Latina Theater Ensemble. And she just told me about the wonderful community, and I was very interested. So I started going to their writing workshops. I've attended several Breath of Fire workshops, and if you go to the website, you can sign up for the newsletter to find out upcoming classes, which I highly recommend. They're taught by people who are experts in their fields, whether it's improv, musical theater, writing, acting, self-care, which is very important because it's very easy, I think, for artists in all fields to burn out. So self-care was a workshop that I enjoyed very much. But they are, like I said, they're very welcoming. No one will be turned away because of lack of funds or because of what language you speak or who you are. And they're very informative. They're easygoing, so, shy people can come. They're not intimidating. And you learn a lot. It's a very tight community. Like I said, you'll feel welcome and maybe walk away having learned a new skill and made new friends and feel like you have a place that you can come back to. The importance of keeping the Latina voice alive in theater and television and entertainment in general is that we have a huge Latino population here, and it's very easy for even though it's a big community, a big population, it's very easy to not see them, to not hear them. To forget the Latina community's needs, wants, desires. Also, then all that might be available is a false narrative about the Latina community. So we need Latinas to tell their stories so that people who don't know the community and maybe even fear the community aren't just listening to false narratives about them.
Then I reconnected with Sarah through South Coast Rep, and I heard that they were doing playwriting workshops and things like that. So I said, well, why don't I try that out? I heard they were doing really great stuff in Santa Ana, so yeah. Latinas and Latinos are extremely underrepresented in theater. Like the stuff I was doing in theater up until this point, not a lot of minorities in them. And their stories are not told also. So when I go in for the workshops, it's fascinating. I'm usually the only white person in there. And the stories I hear from the Latinas are fascinating, things I've never heard before. And they're so interesting, so rich, and I think really important to hear, especially in this political atmosphere. And I think if you hear a play telling your stories in your language, I think that really helps bring that culture into the limelight and helps other people tell their stories too. So I think it's really important to hear at least part of the stories in the native language, in Spanish in this case.
First time I found about Breath of Fire was actually by scrolling through Facebook. It was about, maybe was it a year or two ago? I'm not even sure, but it was like an off day, and I was just like kind of feeling uninspired. And then I saw a post about a playwriting workshop with Christina Leach. It was just like a one-time only thing, and then I didn't have anything that weekend, so I just went, and I loved it. And then I kind of like took a break, but then I joined again when they had another playwriting series. So because it actually gives folks a space to be creative, and it's like a very welcoming environment. Like it's actually like a family. Like I know so many people already, and we barely meet like at one workshop, and we're already like this. It's like a place for artists, really. You just feel free, and yeah, like there should be more spaces like that, especially with the types of people that we have. Like, oh, everybody there. It's just like, yeah. As a kid, like I would always kind of like write little stories, and I even like wrote a novel when I was like 14, and it was something silly, like high school things, and I had this like idea for a screenplay, but it never really was. I didn't have the resources. Like my family wasn't really, we're working class. We didn't really do things that were kind of creative, and like at school it would be like only performance things that I would be involved in. But once I entered college and once I found Breath of Fire, that's when I really knew that there was a place for me to exercise that muscle that I've never been able to. So the first time I ever met any of the people at Breath of Fire, it was pretty cool because it was about probably 4 people, and then Christina Leach, and it was a really great little meetup, and I remembered it was like a writing prompt that we had to use, like newspapers, and then I just had this story spark in there, and I was so excited, and then I had to share it, and it was great because it's like they all kind of saw that like spark, like, oh my god, like, oh look at her, she found something. And when Diana Bourbano had her playwriting series, I think it might have been last year, the first class, it was eye-opening, And I remember riding the bus because I would get there. I don't have a car. I just take public transit. Like I like taking public transit, and the way back, I had like this idea that came out, and I just started writing and writing and writing right after I took Diana's first class, and it was amazing. Like I had this idea all along. Like it was kind of semi-autobiographical, but not really, and it was just something in that class that day that just like made me, like, you should have seen me like in the bus. I was just like, "Wah!" And like it was 7 p.m. and I was getting off the bus and I was like, whoa, I have something. I've never had anything before. Like I never really took a chance on myself. So I guess that's kind of like the awakening that I had.
I first found out about them because I was a regular attendee at the Pacific Playwrights Festival at South Coast Repertory Theater. I would just go every single year. And one of those years I met Sarah, and she was there, and I heard about this new company, so obviously it's been a minute. And I started to track her career and what she was doing. So it really was just meeting somebody in person and hearing about the company in a very organic sort of way. I think it's really important to have a group like Breath of Fire because you have a company that is focused on Latinx women. And I think it's really easy to think about Latinx theater in a broader way, and it is very inclusive in so many ways. But it's also really special and unique to have a woman-centered theater, and I think that that's a uniqueness that I'm interested in seeing sustained and kept. I think it's because, when we look at bilingual plays, we're really looking at plays that dance in both languages. And sometimes Spanish becomes just a flavor. Sometimes it becomes a primary language and English becomes a secondary language. It really depends on the play. But it gives us a chance to live in two universes at once, which is what Latino playwrights do. They live in these two worlds. And Spanish is just a physical manifestation of what those two worlds feel like and how they behave and what they truly are. I always think of it as having one foot on both sides of the border and this feeling of like somehow existing in between. And I think that's the experience of the Latinx person. And it's certainly the experience that we have when we experience a play that might be leaning more toward a language we're not as familiar with, or perhaps it's our experience that, hey, these are the two languages that dance in my head.
Breath of Fire's mission is to offer more opportunities in the visual and performing arts for Latinas. And it's important, I think, to local and Southern California communities because, one, it's in the mission that we're there to offer that space for Latinas that may not be there for other, within the local community. And I think it's just important to have a presence of Latinas and a Chicano, Latina, X, space just in the artist community. It's important to have bilingual plays because, again, you want the audience to hear themselves in it. They want to see themselves in the play. And, whichever way you can do it, whichever language you can get an audience member to relate and feel comfortable with the play, you should go for it. I would like to see more plays produced in Spanish. I'm actually a pocha, so I'm half white, half Mexican, and so I came to Spanish, in high schools where I learned Spanish, but poorly, very badly. And I had to go to college to learn all the bad words. My friends taught me that. But it's important to have the language because there's so many people who speak Spanish. They should be able to see plays and media in their language. Aspiring playwrights is they show up to one of our workshops and you just show up. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be a writer. You just show up and, if people want to share, they can share. If they don't have to. And we just sort of take everybody along and hopefully they'll get something out of it. We've had people who weren't playwrights who've come and taken the workshop. I think it's really important if you're an artist to try a different genre as well. I think it translates or brings something new to whatever your main art form is.